Whoa, hold up. Did you see what Google just dropped? Gemini 3.1 Flash TTS with native multi-speaker dialogue? Like, we're talking about AI that can handle different voices in the same conversation without breaking a sweat. Plus, Anthropic just unveiled Claude Design, and I'm not even sure where to start with how wild this is getting.
Right? It's like both companies decided to have their biggest product drops of the year on the same Monday. I'm Aiva, and this is Tomas, and you're listening to Semper AI Digest. We've got Google's massive multimodal rollout, Claude's design revolution, and honestly, some announcements that are going to change how we think about AI workflows entirely.
And we're going deep on all of it. Plus, there's a $100,000 hackathon that just opened up, some game-changing integrations, and a few quick hits that'll make you want to fire up your laptop immediately. Let's dive in.
Okay, so Google just had what they're calling their biggest shipping week ever, and I actually believe them this time. We're talking Gemini 3.1 Flash TTS, robotics upgrades, Mac desktop app, new integrations. Tomas, walk me through this because there's a lot to unpack here.
Dude, where do I even start? Okay, so the crown jewel here is Gemini 3.1 Flash TTS. This isn't just another text-to-speech model. We're talking native multi-speaker dialogue support, which means you can have conversations between different AI voices without that weird robotic handoff we're used to. Think about podcast generation, audiobook narration with multiple characters, training scenarios.
Wait, native multi-speaker? So it's not just switching between pre-recorded voice banks?
Exactly. It's generating the conversation dynamically, and it supports 70+ languages. But here's the kicker. They've added what they're calling improved controllability and audio tags. So you can literally tag sections of text to control how it sounds. Want someone to sound excited? Frustrated? Whisper something? You just tag it.
That's actually huge for accessibility applications. I'm thinking about educational content, language learning, even therapeutic applications where tone and emotion really matter. But let me ask this, how natural does it actually sound? Because we've been promised natural TTS before and gotten mixed results.
Well, Google's claiming it's more expressive, and based on their track record with the Gemini models, I'm cautiously optimistic. But you're right to push on that. The real test will be when people start building with it. Speaking of which, it's already live in AI Studio, so developers can start experimenting immediately.
That's smart. Getting it into developer hands quickly means we'll see real-world feedback fast. What about the robotics piece? Gemini Robotics ER 1.6?
Oh man, this is where it gets really sci-fi. Google DeepMind is positioning this as helping robots reason about the physical world. So we're not just talking about better object recognition or navigation. This is about understanding physics, spatial relationships, cause and effect in real environments.
That sounds incredibly ambitious. What does reason about the physical world actually mean in practical terms?
Think about it like this. Current robots are pretty good at following pre-programmed instructions, but they struggle when the unexpected happens. A robot vacuum hits a sock on the floor, and it just stops or tries to push through it. But a robot with better physical reasoning might think, oh, this is a fabric object. It's movable. I can push it aside or go around it based on the room layout.
Right. So it's more about adaptability and problem-solving in unstructured environments. That's definitely needed if we want robots that can actually help in homes or workplaces. But I have to ask, are we talking about research stage improvements or something that's actually shipping in products?
That's the million-dollar question. And Google's being a bit vague on the timeline. They're calling it an upgrade, which suggests it's building on existing capabilities, but the real-world deployment details are fuzzy. Typical Google, honestly.
Fair enough. What about the desktop app? Because I know a lot of people have been waiting for that.
Yes. Gemini app for Mac is finally here, and they've given it a proper system shortcut. Option plus space. So you can summon Gemini from anywhere on your Mac without opening a browser tab. It sounds simple, but that kind of system-level integration makes a huge difference for actual usage.
Oh, that's smart. It's like Spotlight, but for AI conversations. I can see that becoming a habit really quickly. What about the personal intelligence updates?
This is where it gets interesting. They've added integrations with Google Photos and something called Nano Banana 2 for personalized image creation. So Gemini can now pull from your actual photo library to understand context about your life, your interests, your style, and then generate images that feel more relevant to you personally.
Wait, Nano Banana 2? That's a new one for me.
I think it's their internal code name for their image personalization engine. But the key thing is that this is available for AI Pro, Plus, and Ultra subscribers in the US. So they're making personalized AI generation a premium feature, which makes sense from a business perspective.
That raises some interesting privacy questions, though. How much of your photo data is Google analyzing to make these personalizations work?
Great point. They haven't released specific details about the privacy model, but presumably it's following their standard approach of on-device processing where possible. Still, you're right that people should be aware of what data they're sharing when they enable these features.
Definitely something to watch. What about the Google AI Studio updates?
Two things that caught my eye: design previews and something they're calling tab functionality. The design previews sound like they're making it easier to visualize what you're building before you export it. And the tab functionality, honestly, I'm not entirely sure what that means, but it sounds like improved navigation or workflow management.
Tab is definitely cryptic. Maybe it's keyboard shortcuts for power users. Sometimes Google's internal naming conventions leak into their announcements.
Probably, yeah. And then there's skills in Google Chrome, which is actually really clever. You can save your most helpful Gemini prompts and run them with a single click right in your browser. So if you've perfected a prompt for code review or meeting summaries or whatever, you can turn it into a reusable tool.
That's brilliant for workflow automation. I can see teams building libraries of company-specific prompts that everyone can use. It's like having custom AI tools without needing to build custom software.
Exactly. And it's all browser-based, so there's no additional setup or installation. Google's really thinking about reducing friction for AI adoption.
This whole release is impressive in scope. It feels like Google is trying to cover every possible use case: personal productivity, creative work, development, robotics, enterprise workflows. Are they spreading themselves too thin, or is this the right approach?
I think it's smart, actually. They're in a position where they need to prove Gemini can compete with GPT and Claude across multiple domains. Rather than focusing on just one area and hoping it's enough, they're showing breadth and depth simultaneously.
Fair point. And speaking of Claude, let's talk about what might be the biggest design tool announcement of the year. Anthropic just unveiled Claude Design, and I'm still wrapping my head around what this means.
Dude, this is absolutely wild. Claude Design is powered by Claude Opus 4.7, which they're calling their most capable vision model yet. And you can literally just talk to Claude and have it build prototypes, slides, presentations, one-pagers, visual content that would normally take hours in traditional design tools.
So, we're talking about natural language to visual design? Like I could say, make me a presentation about quarterly sales trends with a modern minimalist style, and Claude just builds it?
That's exactly what they're claiming. And here's what's really impressive. Claude doesn't just create a static design and call it done. You can refine through conversation, add inline comments, make direct edits, or even use custom sliders to adjust elements. It's like having a design conversation with a really talented designer who never gets tired of revisions.
Wait, custom sliders? What does that mean in this context?
Think about it like this. Instead of trying to describe exactly how much you want to adjust the color saturation, or spacing, or font weight, you get interactive controls. So you might have a slider for playful to professional, or minimal to detailed, and you can just drag to see the design update in real time.
That's actually genius. It solves one of the biggest problems with AI design tools, that gap between what you're envisioning and what you can articulate in words. But I have to ask, how good are the actual designs? Because we've seen AI-generated graphics before, and they're often not great.
Well, Anthropic is being smart about setting expectations. They're calling this a research preview, and it's only available on Pro, Max, Team, and Enterprise plans. So they're not overselling it, and they're starting with users who understand they're testing something experimental.
That's a good approach. What about export options because a beautiful design that's trapped in Claude's interface isn't super useful?
They've thought about that. You can export to Canva, as PDF, as PowerPoint files, or, and this is really clever, hand off directly to Claude Code when you want to turn the design into actual working software.
Oh wow, that workflow integration is smart. Design to development handoff is usually where projects slow down or details get lost. If Claude can maintain design consistency through the coding phase,
Right? And they've got another announcement that builds on this. Claude can now read your existing codebase and design files to understand your team's design system, then apply that automatically to new projects. So everything stays on brand without manual style guides or constant design reviews.
that's huge for larger teams. Maintaining design consistency across multiple developers and projects is a real pain point. But how does it actually work? Does Claude analyze component libraries, CSS files, brand guidelines?
They're being a bit vague on the technical details, but it sounds like Claude can parse multiple file types and extract design patterns. So yeah, probably CSS, component libraries, existing designs, maybe even brand guideline documents.
I'm curious about accuracy, though. Design systems can be really nuanced. Subtle spacing rules, specific color usage guidelines, typography hierarchies. Can Claude really capture all that complexity?
That's the big question. And honestly, we won't know until teams start testing it in production. But the fact that they're starting with enterprise customers suggests they're confident enough to bet their business relationships on it.
Fair point. And there's more Claude news, right? Something about Word integration?
Yes, Claude for Word is now available on Pro and Max plans, working alongside Opus 4.7. So you can have Claude directly in your Word documents, writing assistance, editing, research, all integrated into your normal writing workflow.
That's going to be popular. How many people are switching between Word and ChatGPT or Claude in browser tabs right now? Having it integrated directly removes so much friction.
Exactly. Microsoft has Copilot built into Word, but now Anthropic is giving people a choice. And based on the capabilities we've been seeing from Claude lately, that competition is going to be really interesting.
Speaking of competition, there's also a hackathon announcement, right?
Oh yeah, this is big. The Claude Code Hackathon is back, focused specifically on Opus 4.7. They're bringing builders from around the world together for a week, with the Claude Code team directly involved, and there's a $100,000 prize pool in API credits.
$100,000 in API credits? That's serious money. When's the application deadline?
Applications close this Sunday, so if anyone's listening and thinking about it, you need to move fast. But this tells us something important about how confident Anthropic is in Opus 4.7's capabilities. You don't put up that kind of prize money unless you think people can build genuinely impressive things.
True. And it's smart marketing, getting developers excited about building with your latest model, creating buzz, probably discovering use cases that Anthropic hadn't even considered.
Plus, they mentioned that teams can export designs from Claude Design and hand them off to Claude Code during the hackathon. So we might see some really interesting end-to-end projects that go from concept to working application entirely within Claude's ecosystem.
That's a compelling workflow. Design, develop, and iterate all in one platform. It reminds me of what Replit or Glitch are trying to do, but with more AI intelligence at each step.
Exactly. And before we move on, there's one more detail about Claude Design that's worth mentioning. You can refine designs through multiple methods: conversation, inline comments, direct edits, or those custom sliders we talked about. That flexibility suggests they've really thought about different user preferences and skill levels.
Right. Some people think visually, some prefer written feedback, some want precise control. Covering all those interaction styles is smart design in itself.
Okay, let's shift gears to some other stories that caught our attention. First up, Google's getting more generous with Gemini notebooks. They're now available to free users on the web, not just paid subscribers.
That's a significant change. What exactly are notebooks in this context?
Think of them as persistent, private workspaces where you can organize longer AI conversations and research. But here's the cool part. You can now use your regular Gemini chats as sources in new or existing notebooks. So if you had a great conversation about a project last week, you can pull that context into a new notebook and build on it.
Oh, that's useful. I've definitely had the experience of losing track of good AI conversations. Having a way to organize and reference them could be really valuable for ongoing projects.
And the fact that they're making it available to free users suggests Google wants to increase engagement and stickiness. If people are organizing their AI work in Gemini notebooks, they're less likely to switch to a different AI platform.
Smart retention strategy. What's next?
OpenAI just announced that you can now generate and iterate on images with GPT Image 1.5 directly in Codex. So we're talking about creating front-end designs, mockups, game assets, all without leaving your development workflow.
Wait, GPT Image 1.5? Is that a new model?
It seems to be their latest image generation model, integrated specifically into the Codex development environment. The key thing is that iteration piece. You can generate an image, tweak it, regenerate, adjust again, all while you're coding.
That could be huge for rapid prototyping. How many times do developers need placeholder images or quick mockups and end up either using terrible placeholder text or stopping their coding flow to hunt for assets?
Exactly. And they're including this with ChatGPT accounts, so there's no additional subscription needed. It's part of OpenAI's strategy to make their tools more integrated and workflow-friendly.
That makes sense. Everyone's trying to reduce the number of tools and subscriptions people need to juggle.
Speaking of which, we need to talk about this Google AI Studio update for text-to-speech. They've added something really clever. You can now control vocal delivery using tags directly in your text.
Tags for vocal delivery? What does that look like in practice?
So instead of just typing dialogue, you can include tags like or right in front of the text, and the AI adjusts the voice accordingly. They're calling it specific vocal delivery like pace and accent.
That's incredibly useful for content creation. Podcasters, audiobook producers, e-learning developers, anyone who needs nuanced voice control without hiring multiple voice actors.
And they've built it into the Composer view in AI Studio, so you can iterate and test different vocal styles immediately, then export the code to start building your application. It's like having a voice director and audio engineer built into your development environment.
The iteration aspect is key. Being able to test and refine vocal delivery in real time could save hours of post-production work.
All right, let's rapid fire through some quick hits, because there are a few smaller announcements worth mentioning. First, there's this fascinating take from someone named Alex Finn about Claude Opus 4.7 pricing. They're arguing that even if it costs $1,000 a month through the API, it's still worth paying for because of what they call OpenClaw capabilities.
OpenClaw? That's a new term for me.
I think it's community slang for Claude's ability to interact with other systems and tools. The argument is basically that if an AI model can genuinely replace or augment high-skilled work, the cost becomes irrelevant compared to the value generated.
That's an interesting economic argument, though I'd want to see more specifics about what OpenClaw actually delivers before accepting that $1,000 price point.
Fair enough. It's definitely unverified claims territory, but it does reflect how the community is thinking about AI ROI at the high end.
Speaking of community reactions, are you seeing any interesting patterns in how people are responding to all these announcements?
Yeah, there's this sense that we're hitting a new level of AI capability, especially around multimodal integration. People aren't just excited about individual features, they're excited about workflows that combine text, voice, images, and code seamlessly.
That makes sense. The real value often comes from integration rather than any single capability. Like, Claude Design by itself is cool, but Claude Design that can hand off to Claude Code and maintain design consistency across your existing code base, that's a game changer.
Exactly. And Google's big release feels similar. It's not just that they have better text-to-speech or better robotics AI, it's that they're building an ecosystem where all these capabilities work together.
Right, and both companies seem to be thinking about reducing friction at every step. Browser integration, keyboard shortcuts, file format compatibility, API integration, all the little details that determine whether people actually use these tools or just demo them once.
Which brings us back to something we've talked about before, the difference between impressive technology and useful technology. All these announcements sound impressive, but the real test is whether they solve actual problems for real users.
True, and we should get feedback on that pretty quickly. Between Google's AI Studio availability, Claude's research preview, and the various developer integrations, people can actually test these capabilities immediately.
That's one thing I really appreciate about this current wave of AI development. Companies are shipping experimental features to users instead of just publishing research papers. We get real-world feedback loops instead of just theoretical capabilities.
Although it does put more pressure on users to figure out what's actually ready for production versus what's still experimental. Not everyone reads the fine print about research previews and beta features.
Good point. There's definitely a responsibility on both sides. Companies need to be clear about the maturity level of their releases, and users need to understand what they're signing up for.
Speaking of signing up for things, that Claude Code Hackathon deadline is coming up fast. If anyone listening is thinking about participating, what should they know?
Well, it's specifically focused on Opus 4.7, so participants will get access to Claude's most advanced capabilities. The prize pool is substantial. 100,000 in API credits could fund a serious startup for months. And having the Claude Code team directly involved means you'll get insights into best practices and emerging use cases.
Plus, if you're working on something that could benefit from the design-to-code workflow we talked about earlier, this could be the perfect opportunity to test that integration in a competitive environment.
Absolutely. And even if you don't win, hackathons are great for networking, learning, and getting feedback on your ideas. The deadline is Sunday, so there's still time to put together an application.
Before we wrap up, let's zoom out a bit. We've covered a lot of individual announcements today, but what patterns are you seeing across the industry?
I think we're seeing AI companies move beyond the "look what our model can do" phase into the "here's how it fits into your actual workflow" phase. Everyone's focused on integration, iteration, and reducing friction.
That's a more mature approach. Instead of just demonstrating raw capabilities, they're thinking about user experience and practical adoption barriers.
Right. And there's also this interesting convergence happening where text, voice, images, and code are becoming fluid mediums that AI can work across seamlessly. You can describe something in words, see it as an image, hear it as speech, and implement it as code, all within the same conversation.
That's profound when you think about it. We're moving toward AI interfaces that match how humans naturally think and communicate, rather than forcing humans to adapt to rigid computer interfaces.
Exactly. And the speed of iteration is accelerating. Claude Design lets you refine through conversation. Google's TTS lets you adjust vocal delivery with simple tags. GPT Imaging Codex lets you generate and iterate without breaking your development flow.
It's like AI is becoming more conversational and collaborative rather than just transactional. Instead of, here's my prompt, give me output, it's becoming, let's work on this together and refine it until it's right.
That's a great way to put it, and I think that collaborative aspect is what's going to determine which AI platforms succeed long-term. Raw capability matters, but the ability to iterate and refine in natural ways might matter more.
Especially for creative and knowledge work where the first output is rarely the final output. People need tools that support the messy, iterative process of actual work, not just clean demo scenarios.
Which reminds me, we should probably mention that all these capabilities we've discussed today are rolling out at different speeds and to different user tiers. Some are available immediately to everyone, some are premium features, some are research previews. People should check the specific availability for anything they're interested in trying.
Good point. And as always, when you're testing new AI capabilities, especially the experimental ones, it's worth starting with low-stakes projects to get a feel for what works well and what doesn't.
Absolutely. These tools are powerful, but they're still evolving rapidly. What works great in a demo might need more refinement in production.
All right, I think that wraps up our deep dive into this week's major announcements. We've got Google's massive multimodal release, Claude's design revolution, integration updates, developer opportunities, and a lot of signals about where the industry is heading.
It's been a packed episode, and honestly, this feels like one of those weeks where the pace of AI development just shifted into a higher gear. Between Google and Anthropic alone, we've seen announcements that would have been headline news individually, and they all dropped in the same few days.
True, and for anyone who's been waiting for AI tools that feel more integrated into actual workflows rather than standalone demos, this might be the inflection point you've been waiting for.
For sure, whether you're a designer, developer, content creator, or just someone who wants AI that fits naturally into how you work, there's probably something in today's announcements that's worth exploring.
Just remember to read the fine print about what's experimental versus production ready, and start with projects where you can afford to iterate and learn.
Perfect advice. And if you found this episode helpful, make sure to subscribe to Semper AI Digest and share it with anyone else who's trying to keep up with the rapid pace of AI development. We're here to help you cut through the noise and focus on what actually matters.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time with whatever wild announcements the AI world decides to drop on us.
Until then, keep building, keep experimenting, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.